And we are live for episode 179 of Trek Live. How you doing this morning, Dan?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited about today's topic. It should be a really good time. Uh, just a little bit behind the scenes stuff. Bill's actually producing this stuff because it's kind of a more me centered topic. So I feel very free and very excited to just
Yeah.
talk about some Star Trek with no producery stuff to worry about. So
Yeah, we've evolved a lot over the years. I feel like we started out. You obviously were producing all of it, like right at the beginning for the first few years, and then I did a little bit of it for a while. Then there was a period where we were doing both. Like both of us were producing every week because we were doing Twitter live and Periscope and YouTube. So I think this is what we got to do. I think we got to trade off and give each other
yeah.
a chance to do that and to take a week kind of off and just talk because I do think
Mhm.
it's more relaxing, especially for
Yeah.
like this week for you. We're going to be talking about your experiences. Um, so yeah, to kind of build off that, we're going to do a season 6 recap, which is we're kind of converging at a really interesting. It's been like this for a little bit, but like truly now you're just finishing season 6 today.
Just starting.
Literally just finished it
Yeah.
today. I just started it last night. I watched The Time to Stand last night, so um, I like doing this. I like hearing your experiences as I'm kind of getting ready to go into it because it gives me some new context to think about these episodes going in.
Mhm.
It gives me some things to look for and think about. So, really eager to hear your thoughts. Some of these episodes we've kind of covered little bits in our rewatch recap. Some of them not so much. They're episodes that we're going to talk about today that I have no idea what you really think of. Um, and for a little bit more background, we don't typically go like straight 1 to 26 in order. We'll bounce around a little bit. I'll kind of ask you interview
Yeah.
style, fluidly bouncing through the season. So it's a little unconventional. It's relaxed. It's not incredibly structured, but we're going to touch on all 26 episodes. Hear what you have to share from your most recent experience. I'll talk a little bit about what I remember and my preconceived notions. Um, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Adam's in the room, longtime viewer of Trek
Welcome,
Live,
Adam.
going back to the very, very beginning.
Good to see you.
Good friend. It has 2 episodes left in DS9 season 6, so these episodes are fresh for him too, and very curious to hear where you agree and disagree, Adam, as we kind of go through these. One thing I do want to share: we usually don't do a rewatch recap on these because it's kind of like a big jumbo rewatch recap anyway. But I do want to share. I watched Day of Honor last night. I watched
Mm.
a couple over the course of the last couple days. I watched Scorpion Part 2 through Nemesis for Voyager, the episode Nemesis, and A Time to Stand for Deep Space Nine. And specifically Day of Honor really hit me. Really a lot more than usual. I've always liked that episode a lot, but I feel like it's grown on me over the years. I think this time around, I took away from it there's a definite lesson in it that could be so pat and cliche and Pollyannish. It's literally said in the episode like that unexpected acts of kindness are like the key to the whole thing. That's what Tom uses to unlock Balana and to make that happen.
Mhm.
Tom Paris's unexpected act of kindness with Seven of Nine in the corridor, telling her that he's there for her, he understands what she's going through, as somebody that's not accepted into the
That's
family.
Star Trek.
That's Star Trek, and it unlocks the solution to the episode. That's Seven of Nine says on the bridge that she's observed that humanity is capable of unexpected acts of compassion and kindness, and that's what makes her think of the solution that ends the standoff with the Katati. She's got this technology in mind that they took from the Katati as Borg, that she
Mhm.
could basically regurgitate back to them to give them a source of resources and power that they're kind of so desperate for. And her way of thinking as a Borg was to take and not to share, and not to be compassionate, not to be empathetic.
So,
And Tom
yeah.
Paris is just perfectly pitched conversation about acceptance and compassion is what unlocked it. And I think the fact that it came from Tom, as somebody who had early days on the ship as not accepted and not, you know, well thought of by the widespread. You think of him in his first scenes on the ship in the mess hall, walking in, going to order soup, and looking around and seeing everybody looking at him and judging him and talking about him. He
Some
knows
Michael
exactly.
Burnham effect.
Exactly, yeah, the same thing Michael Burnham
Yeah.
experiences in Context is for Kings. That feeling like a pariah on the ship. So he knows exactly what Seven of Nine is going through, and these are the components. When I think of Day of Honor, I think it's easy to think of spacesuits floating around in space. You know, the beginning of the romance. Like those things are all great and ambitious and really and big deals for the show, but there's that simple lesson that I think could have easily been oversimplified and silly and corny and cliche that I think they really did a nice job of conveying in a way that is effective. So, quick little rewatch recap for me. Day of Honor is awesome. Go watch it. It's been a while. Trust me, it's great. So I think we should get right into it. Let's talk about season 6 of Deep Space Nine. So we're gonna transition on the YouTube side of things to a listing of episodes on the screen. There's gonna be I'm gonna label episodes as see it or skip it from Dan's perspective as we hit each one. That's gonna be kind of the ultimate thumbs up, thumbs down from his perspective. But before we even do that, we've done this 6 times now. This is our 6th one. So you've talked about this each one, but in case this is the first time somebody's watched this, how do you
6 more times.
Yeah. How do you define a see it or a skip it in your own through your own lens?
The see it or skip it is easier for me to. I know Bill is all about rankings and things, so I wanted to simplify it a little bit for me at least. It makes it easier on my end. But if there's something that's essential viewing, that's when I say see it. It actually can be a very bad episode, but if it's essential to the story and the overarching theme and things explored in the series, I think it's a see it. So often I cite as Storyteller is often cited as one of the worst episodes of probably Deep Space Nine. It's a see it for me because of the friendship. That's where the friendship starts between O'Brien and Bashir, and I think that's so pivotal and so essential for this show. That's like a pillar of the show is their friendship. So that is a see it for me. So that's kind of where I'm gonna go here with some of these episodes and my thinking about see it or skip it in the future with future episodes and future series and things like that.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of nuance to it. It's not strictly a critical eye on thumbs up, thumbs down. You're thinking about how it fits into the overall.
We play in the gray here. We I know see it or skip it on surface levels seems very black and white, and my brain sometimes works like that, but it's a little bit different. So
right,
yeah,
okay. I think we should get right into it. I know I said right off the bat that I typically don't go chronologically, just 1 to 26, but I do think maybe the way to start this is to kind of look at those first 6 episodes because they're so linked together and kick the whole thing off. So, A Time to Stand, Rocks and Shoals, Sons and Daughters, Behind the Lines, Favor the Bold, Sacrifice of Angels. Those 6 episodes, I'm assuming, based on your criteria, that it would be pretty hard to put a skip it on any of them. Because
that's all I see it. I mean, it's almost like a hangover from season 5. Like these are such a pivotal run of episodes that because the Dominion War is in full swing right now, and then the Dominion War is such a staple of this show. You can't break up these first 6 because they have a little bit different A and B stuff, but it's kind of the similar kind of connection to the war and stuff like that. So you can't separate. So that's all see it for me. So
yeah, I think that's obvious. I do think the 6 episodes do have some distinctive tones. They're not. I mean, they are very serialized, and it would be really difficult to jump right into Behind the Lines without having seen the 3 preceding, really even the end of season 5, like you said.
Yeah.
But they do all have, their own qualities. Rocks and Shoals is a very different episode than Sons and Daughters.
Sons and Daughters, yes.
Yeah, Rocks and Shoals has some really distinctive qualities with the location photography on going to a planet, crashing on a planet that gives the episode a lot of scale and scope. I think there are some really cool visuals in that. Do you have from that perspective, are there episodes from that run that stand out the most to you? I mean, obviously Sacrifice of Angels is like the ending of it, of that run, and the culmination of that battle to retake the station. What stands out to you from that arc of episodes? Even if it's not an episode, maybe moments or storylines, because there's so many characters getting things to do with the Dominion characters, and what pops from your perspective?
I think Rocks and Shawls, I think you get the crew gets this perspective of like really, really up close and personal of the mindset and how the like the Dominion operates, along with like just actually seeing it firsthand and just knowing that this is not it's going to be your everyday war. I think that they just their mindset, at least the Jem'Hadar, are so just follow. They will literally follow their orders to the gates of hell. So but then you also get perspective of the Vorta and how they're willing to just wheel and deal things, and it's really good. So yeah, that early perspective, which I think we get some good stuff in that in season 5, but this is really cool to see, just really up close and personal and actually in battle. So
the yin and yang of the open warfare that you get to see with Sisko and company on the Defiant and on the Jem'Hadar ship in the first couple of episodes. The camaraderie of combat, all those themes are really leaned into, I think, in those episodes from their perspective. But on the station, you get the politicking, the quiet resistance. I love in Rocks and Shoals, for example, Kira, the motif of Kira getting on the turbo lift, being surrounded by Jem'Hadar Cardassians and getting used to it, and then having to like snap herself out of it, and the subplot of the Vedic who comes to her and gets through to her with a really extreme move to wake her up, and to illustrate the fact that Bajor has been conquered without having a shot fired. That yin and yang of the quiet side of warfare and the loud, physical battle, boots on the ground. Yeah, exactly. I like that we get both of those things. I love the way Tesso's loyalties, I guess the hallmark of these episodes is give so many characters so many things to do. Dukat and Wayun feel like main characters, like they're driving a lot of these stories, and they're running the station and really, really determining the course of events. And Martok's got big stuff to do, and the female shapeshifter in Odo, like I said, Rom and Nog and Garrick. Like, it's not just our main characters. This is really making use of the recurring cast and the guest stars that they use so often. It's really great stuff. Admiral Ross is a good classic admiral. I think. Okay. Maybe a natural jumping off point from like Sacrifice of Angels, for example. Where that goes, I guess the closest thing to a follow-up from that would be Waltz, at least from the Dukat perspective. What do you think of Waltz as a sort of standalone, very dark?
I think it's really good. It's definitely a simple setup, but I think it's interesting because just kind of what you learn with. Again, I think Deep Space Nine kind of walks that line of trying to explore like rehabilitation after trauma, and this just really dives deep into that and plays with mental health and sanity and things like that. And I think this is where, at least for me, the Dukat goes off the deep end, and then I remember what happens at the end of the series, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later in the show. But yeah, I think it's a great there was a movie. Take my film card away. But it's been done in cinema before. But it's where a patient is actually a prisoner. That type of kind of setup, and that's kind of what we get here. But I think the most fascinating thing about this is the just the exploration and the back and forth between Cisco and Ducat is just really good, and it's a simple setup. It's kind of a bottle show in that it's just on one stage, one set, mostly take place. But it's a definitely deep, dark exploration of mental health and rehabilitation and trauma after something, or trying to work through trauma, and a little ways down the road. But yeah, I really do like Waltz. It's there's definitely a roller coaster for Ducat as far as his character and his character development goes.
Yeah.
I think this is the point where he's if he's on the roller coaster, is off the deep end and you can't stop it. So I like that there was a little bit of but then it's tough because then he ends up saving the captain and letting the Federation know where he is. So it's hard because he's not a true. It's fantastic because he's not a true mustache twirling bad guy. He's complicated. We talked about gray area in the top of the show, and I think Ducat definitely falls into that. And sorry to keep going on Waltz, but there's so much rich stuff. He works through some of the occupation stuff, and it feels like this is a therapeutic session for him. He's just working through all this stuff, and I think this is where he finally snaps. But yeah, it's good stuff. I could go on and on about Waltz, but
Waltz is great.
Yeah,
no, I totally agree. I think you're right that if he was a one-dimensional simpleton bad guy, he would kill Cisco and just try to survive the day and get out of there. And I think he wants Cisco's respect, and he wants to be understood, and he wants to be. He cares about how history is going to judge him, and those textures are all on display. I mean, they've been there all along. I think throughout, every time you see Ducat, really going back to the early days, I think he's concerned with all these things, but his back's really up against the wall, and he's dealing with some serious things from that trauma perspective, like you were saying. And I think that ups the ante for all those qualities to come out, and he's really in a vulnerable position. And yeah, it's a good one. I think the performances of the two actors, the play-like structure on a single set for a lot of it, like you said, was all really effective. Going back real quick, Cyber Honey mentioned Phil Morris is a guest star from Rocks and Schultz. He plays the Jemadar, the main honcho Jemadar in that. He's also in One Small Step in Voyager. He's frequent guest star in Star Trek at this point. And he's really obviously great as that Jemadar in Rocks and Shoals. Jimmy 77. Waltz is an awesome episode. It reminds him of the movie Misery. With Kathy Bates and James Caan. It's a good call. Let's go to one maybe just to get a skip it on the screen. I'm thinking. Maybe I'm jumping the gun and assuming.
Well, I never know.
Let's talk about Resurrection, an episode from the earlier part of the season with Kira and Mirror Barile. How do you feel about Resurrection?
You know me too well. This is I don't know if I've used the term, but another Lifetime-esque episode for me. Definitely a skip it. I think there was better ways to bring back Barile, and I just don't think this was very successful. I've never been much into the Mirror Universe, especially at this time. It's just like there's so much good stuff happening with the war and other characters, and even with the Kira character, which I can't really take credit for this. This is more of a Bill idea, but Kira just falls into the trap of love interest of the week or the season, and that's tough for me to swallow. But yeah, when you're wasting an hour on this, it's just tough when you've built this such great war arc and a bunch of these characters and things, and up to this point, if I'm being completely honest, Deep Space Nine is doing a really good job of balancing these one-off stories with this overarching theme, which I think is foreshadowing to season 2 of Discovery, where there's this overarching theme and path, but there's like such specific episodes. Is like the one where they shrink the ship really small, and that's. But there's also the Dominion War still going on, so I think they do a great job of balancing. Till now, I really can't get into it. I can't buy that Kira would be. I don't know. Just not a good episode for me. It's a skip it.
Sure. Yeah, I think I do. I think the issue here is I think there's some interesting ideas that Discovery kind of alludes to later on with, the risk of knowledge, like widespread knowledge of the mirror universe and easy access to the mirror universe, creating this temptation to go reconnect with old loved ones that you lost, or you go have second chances with people.
Cisco, we
did that. That's the thing. Yeah, in season 3, Cisco kind of gets to play that out with Jennifer, and Jake gets to play it out with Jennifer.
Done this.
So that's kind of the issue for me. Is I feel like it's kind of devoid of like a fresh take, fresh idea. I think it's kind of rehashing things we've already explored. It's just and it's just kind of flat. I get what I think they were trying to do coming off of that war arc. That's a lot of episodes going back to the end of season 5, where they do a good job of finding episodic opportunities in those 6 or 7 episodes running from Call to Arms through Sacrifice of Angels. But they're pretty tonally of a piece, and I think they felt a desire coming out of that to spice it up and do some different kinds of things. And Resurrection certainly feels very different than those early season episodes. But I just, such is the risk with episodic storytelling. Sometimes it doesn't work. And you just got to live with it. But I agree with you. I think it's by this point, I think the mirror universe stuff and Deep Space Nine is kind of tapering out, and definitely kind of flat for me. Let's go to another Kira heavy episode, a much different tone. Wrong's Darker Than Death or Night is a very... One of the things I try to do with this is sometimes I try to stick with a character and maybe find episodes that thread together for a specific character and kind of make our way through the season that way. And that feels like the next big Kira story. So this is Kira having revelations about her mother and her time living on the station.
Use the Bajoran orb to go back in time and see what actually happened. I do like this episode. I think, again, it does what Deep Space Nine does. One of the things that it does best is exploring the deep, dark past. And I think we get in our heads a little bit as far as viewers that the rebels are always the good guys and they're always just, misunderstood or mistreated or things like that. But again, this is... and we try to make it easy. Like the Cardassians were the bad guys, Bajorans were the good guys. But going back, it's like, well, that's not really the case. It's kind of a gray area. And also, 2 more things about this. It's relatable. You can understand it. She's like doing it. Her mom's doing it for her family. But it's also like, I feel like the term collaborator or corroborator or whatever is such a bad thing to be. But again, it's that gray area where like, well, she's doing it for the betterment of it's very wrong. But she's doing it for her family, or hopefully that's what she was doing it for, but she's doing it for her family. And Yeah, as tough as it is to kind of wrap your head around it, I think Kira realizes that yeah, she probably wouldn't be where she is without that. Um, I guess until things happen, but yeah, yeah, again, it, we always try to make it look like it's black and white, but really it's this really gray area, which is really tough to nail down. And I think they do a very fantastic job of um, changing our perspective on multiple different characters and species and collaborators and things like that. So
Yeah, I think that's what it's most effective with. I think it challenges not just Kira's uh, definition in her mind of like what does it mean to be a collaborator? What does that say? What does it say about the person? What it challenges ours too. I think on a most basic you know broad level view of what a collaborator is. It's easy to say awful
yeah,
reprehensible behavior, but forcing yourself into the moment and seeing these things play out and living the reality of the day to day. How did this happen? How did we get here? Adds a lot of gray to that equation. And the other thing that I think is just dramatically juicy, kind of no matter how you shake it, I think it's always interesting to play around with the idea of like unearthing a deep dark secret about a parent that's gone. Somebody or a loved one or a person that's very close to you and that you think that you have this image in your head of, I know everything about my mom or my dad or my wife or whoever it is that's long gone, and unearthing this gigantic chapter of a life that you didn't know or understand. I think that's kind of an interesting thing to explore. So I don't think I see it, skip it.
See it for sure. It's a see it. And it's a great use of time travel, which I think, to be honest, if I'm being honest here, Deep Space Nine does a great job of time travel. So
yeah,
yeah.
They don't ever use it, and when they do it, it tends to be laser focused on like character and exploring. How it affects a person.
Very like under the microscope. Other examples of going back in time is a little bit more broad and a bigger scope, but this is like, yeah, you're right, laser focused.
Cyber Honey says Wrongs Darker Than Death or Night is in her top 5 season 6 episodes because Kira finally tries to kill Dukat, which is what she believes she should have tried to do for the first 5 seasons.
Yeah.
Respect that. Cool. There's another big Kira episode here, but I think I'll wait because let's just do it. Let's do it his way. I don't know what you thought of his way. This is kind of a Kira Odo, mostly Odo. I think mostly told from Odo's perspective, but certainly moving the Kira character forward as well. What are your thoughts on talk about like a Swiss Army knife Star Trek idea doing?
Yeah, genre. Completely.
Yeah.
Not 180, but a big swing in the kind of the opposite direction. I like it. I think it's a see it. I think it's a good development for Odo. I know a lot of people can take or leave their relationship, but I think this is a good, healthy use to Quark's holosuites. And I think this has been the holodecks kind of bread and butter. It's officers and crewmen being able to work through some things and work on some things, and Odo definitely has that. And I love the setting here. I love old timey things, and anytime we get to go to old timey Vegas, it's always a treat. I think the guest star is fantastic, which I think he does become kind of recurring.
Oh yeah,
I see him a lot more. Yeah, and the Vic character tricking Odo feels very fun, and it's a good kind of dramatic kind of thing. But I like it. I think it's I think it borders on cheeseball at times, but
sure.
that's how I roll. So I would say this might be on Lifetime, but I would probably watch it as opposed to Resurrection. Um, yeah, it's a see it for me because of the development of the Odo character.
Yeah, I think it's one of the more like effective ways of exploring like what does it mean to be an introvert, breaking out of comfort zone, and like a lot of those things are obviously hallmarks of Odo's character. I think he's like introvert to the extreme, obviously, but I think the way Vic works with him, and like you said, the Howl Suite is used to work on personal traits, and I think it's a good use of that technology and that conceit. And I like his way. I mean, I've grown to like it more over the years. I think in this kind of premise, it's really hard, I think, to label it a skip it because it's so sets into motion. Something
a lot of stuff.
A lot, very important for the sort
not just the Odo and Kira stuff. It's like just these are going to be a recurring character. Yeah.
It really does set into motion some major points in the 7th season with that setting, that guest star, that character, and a relationship that's going to be on a different level moving forward. So even if the mechanics of the episode might not be your cup of tea, I think it's really hard to cut it. I would imagine, at least. Looking for more Odo. Where's a good Odo? Is that? I mean, a lot of his best stuff, I think, comes early on in those first 6 episodes.
It's early on.
Yeah. And then his way. Cool. Okay, let's do some Worf and Dax stuff. You were cordially invited. Let's go back.
Oh, that's just a fantastic. Definitely a see it episode for me. Fantastic episode. I like the kind of whole setup of what would it be like to go on a Klingon bachelor party, and then it feels like the almost opposite you would think of. At least that's my kind of how I think about things. But I think it's really great. The production elements are fantastic. Production design is cool. Costume design is really cool. I love the Klingon backstory stuff. It's an interesting thing because I would think a Trill kind of a procedure would be more meditation based and things like that, and the Klingon stuff would be the rough and rowdy. But they flip it, and I absolutely love that because I think it fits those characters. I think the Dax character would be a celebration, and then Worf would do the to the T ritual things that Klingons usually do, and I love it. So
there's a lot of really
definitely.
Yeah, I think the guest stars are really strong here. Martok, J.J. Hertzler is Martok. Martok's wife is a really good character. Just great costume design with the wedding the wedding attire, I guess you could call it. And it's such a breath of fresh air coming off the war arc. I think, unlike Resurrection, which tries to play a different tone and use a different instrument. I think You Were Cordially Invited is highly successful with building a different flavor coming off of a lot of episodes where we're dealing with a lot of serious stuff. But that wedding is built up a lot over the course of even those episodes, so that feels like a big thing. That there's a lot of dialogue in those first 6 episodes talking about planning the wedding, and Worf and Dax not always agreeing on what they're going to do and how it's going to go. So definitely feels like a big moment. It is a big moment. It's anytime you get 2 characters getting married in Star Trek, that's a big deal. Kind of a game changer. I think a natural jumping off point from there would be Change of Heart, which is really kind of putting their relationship to the test. they're on an away mission and
Yeah,
working together and in a tight spot. What do you think could change your heart?
it's a see it for me because it explores something in Starfleet and in Star Trek that we've always wondered is what's it like to date or interact with your significant other on duty. And I think it's interesting because I feel like there should have been regulations in place before this a little bit. But yeah, it's again, it's one of those examples of this pertains to the war arc. It's a small bit. They're trying to save this informant in Cardassian space, but it's also like a one-off. The one where Worf, I don't know, doesn't follow orders, which I think adds to the weight of how much he cares about Jadzia Dax.
Absolutely.
And that's there's a great moment in the ready room at the end with Sisko, and he says if it was Jennifer done this, he dresses him down beforehand, and says he has to do all these things and his career is going to probably take a different path than he would have if he wouldn't have done this. But at the end, he's like, I would have probably done the same thing. And that's a classic Star Trek thing to end on a dressing down like that. But it's so good. Just the weight of you realize how much Worf cares about her. And because he cares about his career so much,
duty.
But and duty and following orders and honor and all these things. But it's cool to see that throw all those away for Dax. So
I think if the mission statement of the episode kind of going in was to test Worf's commitment to duty and to balance that with how much
test of commitments.
Test of commit, right? Exactly. I think that if that was the mission, which obviously it was, I think that's mission accomplished. I think it tells us a lot about when push comes to shove, where his where his loyalties really lie, and he's able to make that difficult decision and deal with consequences. So I've always really liked Change of Heart. I think it puts those characters to really good use. I think, like you said, choosing to marry these two characters and put them into that unique situation is one thing, but then at the next step would be like, well, what do we do with it? Like, how do we take advantage of the fact that they're married, story-wise, like to tell these stories, and this is at least capitalizing on taking that step with those two characters and giving the show some interesting things to play, and not just calling them married and moving on, and there they are on duty tapping consoles, and like they do something with it, which I appreciate. So Adam says, there definitely should have been regulations in place about spouses on away missions. Yeah. Let's go to. There's a lot of Worf and Dax stuff in the finale, but I think we'll save that. We're closer to the end. There's some good Worf and Dax stuff in one little ship, actually, with runabout being shrunk in a science experiment going wrong. What do you think of that?
It's a see it again. This is a fantastic break in the war type of setup,
but it is a war episode
again,
too. Like, I mean,
but again, then it gets but yeah, it's I really do think this is one of the best of the season. I think for me, it's definitely see it. It's a great sci-fi kind of setup, which Deep Space Nine doesn't do as often as other shows. It's definitely a sci-fi show, obviously, but it doesn't dive deep into the high concept type of exploration things. And this is kind of does that, and then it kind of works to their advantage. I think the banter on the shuttlecraft is really fantastic, and also just it's just a fun. It's really fun.
It is fun.
I know
Fun's the right word.
it's but it's big stakes though, because they technically lose the ship, control the
Yeah,
ship.
yeah.
This is the flagship of the war, and they lost it. So there's big stakes, but I think it doesn't feel as big because um, it's it's just fun. There's some really great exploration of the hierarchy of the Dominion and the Jem'Hadar, and how they there's alphas, and there's also
Yeah.
there's different types of where they've been bred, and things like that.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
great
wish we got
stuff.
a little bit more of that stuff in the season, but yeah, there's some interesting dynamics there that that's really might be a one-off thing. Um, but yeah, it's there's definitely some animosity between the two different quadrant Jim Hadar, which I freaking love, and I love that the production decision to change the tone of the makeup a little bit to kind of
Yeah.
make it look a little bit different, but also still the same. I think that's fantastic, and yeah, just fun, great episode with some really good, juicy world building stuff in it.
Yeah, I think that balance is the key there. It has fun. It does something crazy and sci-fi wonky, but it doesn't lose sight of the war and building some of that key stuff.
Yep.
Rob is here. Hope we're all well. We hope you're well, Rob. Very happy to see you here, and hope you're hanging in there and doing okay. Yeah, the rivalry. He says the rivalries between the Alphas and the Gammas was interesting. That's I think that's a huge selling point of that episode. I think it brings some really cool stuff to the table. And yeah, that's good stuff. Let's do some Dr. Bashir. There's a couple Dr. Bashir episodes that are kind of standing out to me on the board with statistical probabilities first. That's
It's a big see it for me. I've never been a big fan of where that character went, and why did they have to make him genetically enhanced. But I think this is a cool uh, character development kind of point for the Bashir character, because I think he gets written off as this arrogant doctor who's just so focused on his work.
yeah.
It's nice to be able to point to, hey, he shows compassion to it. It's it's tough because technically they're his patients, but I think there's some camaraderie to it a little bit, and it's kind of a Star Trek idea of um, using people who are different for using people who are different and putting them together and working together for a greater cause. And that to me is Star Trek in a nutshell. But yeah, I think it's a fantastic kind of little sci-fi thing. That's there's probably more than one of Julian Bashir's
Yeah.
out there where not all the stuff went right. And they have issues and things, and we all have issues, but we still can come together and work together and to solve a problem. It does go off a little bit of the deep end of how they kind of use their brains, and they think they should spoilers surrender.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's also some like, no, I know the odds are against us. Let's go for it still. And that's I love Cisco saying that. He's just like, yeah, I know the statistical probabilities, yes, but there's a statistic that you can't account for, and that's just I don't know. That's cool as well. But all that it mixed into one episode makes for a fantastic hour, I think. So
Yeah, to go down like I know Adam's a big baseball guy, so I'll for his benefit at least. I think this is like the Star Trek answer to like the Moneyball like analytics in baseball, especially, but they're kind of pervading all sports. But the need for balance in that approach. These guys have done all the numbers and the statistics, and don't think the Federation has any chance at all to win, given the current state of affairs. And like you said, the recommendation is to just surrender and kind of hope for the best. And that I think that's a really cool thing to explore, and has kind of maybe even become more and more pervasive in society and through things like sports. the leaning into analytics and stats. And I'm talking as a guy who loves stats. I do surveys on Twitter to build charts and look at what episodes people love and not love. So I love them as much as anybody. But there is a need for balance and not living in them entirely, and being able and willing to embrace intuition and chance and your gut. And I like that all that stuff's explored, and I agree with you that I have mixed feelings about what they did to the Bashir character. But at least episodes like this deliver on some interesting.
We're getting some bad.
Yeah.
Out of yeah.
Agreed. Let's. And Cyber Honey kind of talks about that genetic engineering thread that even goes all the way back to Space Seed, Unnatural Selection, Enterprise with the eugenics stuff with the augments. All true. The next, the big Deep Space Nine, or the big Dr. Bashir episode that kind of stands out to me is Inquisition, which introduces Section 31, which, especially lately, I think, has become such a hallmark and kind of recurring theme in things like Into Darkness and Discovery. What do you think of Inquisition and how it uses?
I think it's really strong. I think they started off really well with just manipulating and not the unknown, very mysterious. I to see it for me, because obviously this starts off Section 31 and some great backstory, and I think I don't know. It's just interesting to put the Bashir character in a situation like that, where he, because he's always been a proponent of just like of saving. He's obviously a doctor, so he's obviously believes in kind of the Federation and what they stand for. But this just you can see the just complete surprise, and just I don't know. It's played very well, but it just seems like it's unbelievable that something that he just holds so dear and so true would have an entity like this. So it's I think it does great things, though, because it also plants a seed of like there's more questions than I have answers here. And the guest star is fantastic. There's some great costume design that we've missed. The vest, I think, gets shown in this.
Oh yeah.
His all black kind of jumpsuit that kind of fits the bill. It's a really good episode, I think. Definitely see it for me.
Strong guest star. There's a lot of love in the chat. Rob, Adam, Cyber Honey, all kind of validating William Sadler. Brilliant as Sloan, as Rob says. I think you're right on the name, Rob. Really, really strong highlight of Deep Space Nine. I mean, Deep Space Nine, I think it's easy to fall into when you think of guest stars, it's all the recurring guys and gals who kind of come and go. Louis Fletcher and Mark and Andrew Robinson. These guys who are in like dozens of episodes. But William Sadler is kind of maybe a run below that, only in a couple, 2 or 3 episodes. Really contributes a lot. Walks that line really, really well of is he legit or is he not, in the mystery in the kind of front half of that episode especially.
It's also believable too, because technically Sloan is he's
right.
The Bashir was in that camp for a long time, and so it's a slippery slope with which we've seen in Star Trek before with like the witch hunt stuff, but it's believable, and you can kind of fall into that trap a little bit. You can see Sloan's side, so
agreed. Let's do some Ferengi stuff. We got the Magnificent Ferengi, and then there's a few here that I'm eager to talk about. What do you think of the Magnificent Ferengi?
It's so awesome. It's I love, this is again an episode where it does that balance of, this is kind of a war story, but it's also it's very distinct, and we get to go to the other station, which is cool too. I love anytime we go there. It's great. It's definitely got some homage to some historic cinema stuff, but it's also fantastic that fantastic use of the Ferengi in a comedic standpoint. But that also does some just some great character development for Quark and his ability to um, fight for his family. I know some of the family dynamic later on doesn't really work and definitely falls flat for me. But in this, it's all good. So yeah, really good.
A lot of really
Love
good
it.
characters. I think brings a lot of the old favorites back. I mean, with Brunt and Gala, who's in Business as Usual in the previous season as the weapons dealer. Like, and then you get some new guys too.
Cousin Gala.
Cousin Gala.
Yeah.
I think
Does the moon.
Yeah, the guy with the
I don't know. Yeah.
It's really good. I think it
Yeah.
uses those characters really well, and they all get a chance to shine. And like you said, it's still tuned into the war arc. It's not like a single, complete standalone side adventure. It gets woven into the sort of overarching story here. Rob mentioned the final scene. Kevin walking into the wall is memorable for sure. That's a funny image that I think people remember. The humor in that really works. Deep Space Nine does funny really well. A lot of good comedies kind of sprinkled throughout, and some of them are Ferengi, some of them are not. And this is one of the more successful. I think this and Little Green Men really are the big winners of that sort of subgenre of Deep Space Nine episodes. Iggy Pop is in it, correct? As the Vorta. Cool piece of casting as well. What about Who Mourns for Morn, which is another, if we're talking Quark at least, little side adventure for him, and exploring more.
Is there anything in that moves the war story along?
No, I don't think so. I think it's pretty much a pretty isolated standalone little side.
And for that reason alone, I think it's a skip it for me. I love the Morn character, but this feels like one of those resurrection moments where there's so much going on right now, and we choose to focus on this really one-off bottle show. It's like, I know probably of the time that this was not this is what they wanted more of, is they wanted more of one-off things like we've seen before in other Star Trek shows. But this to me just feels really out of place, and maybe it's because it's what episodes it's around. It's coming off Waltz, which I freaking love, and then the next episode is also a Trek classic, so maybe that's it. That plays a factor into it, but there's just not enough there to justify a C attack for me. So it is a skip it.
Okay, our second skip it is on the board. I have mixed feelings about it. I love that it explores the Morn character and kind of what he means to different people without using him at all in true fashion. Like they're able to put the spotlight on him without while keeping the joke alive that you never hear him talk. But I kind of agree with you. I think in the mix of season 6, I think it's easy to kind of let that recede into meh territory. I always enjoy it when I watch it. Like it's not unpleasant or weak. I wouldn't say, but it's not one that I kind of gravitate back to very often. So I can go that way. I'm kind of curious. That's one I'm very curious to hit in the rewatch and to kind of see how I feel on a fresh look.
And it's also interesting too what people will do for money. That's I think they're commentating on that and stuff, but that just not enough for me to justify it. So
fair enough. I think we got to do Profit and Lace and see how we feel about.
It's that's a tough hour. Sorry, I'm gonna try some positives here. As positives, I like the push towards equality.
Sure.
But the way that they go for it using sexuality to get equality. I don't agree with that. Why can't they just be a good Ferengi and be conniving and be profitable instead of using the sexuality part of it? What I mean by sexuality is using sex to get what you want,
Yeah.
and I don't agree with that. So the positives here is like I've always, that's something that I've always, but it's a culture thing. I've struggled with how Ferengi treat their women, and I think that's
very toxic.
Very toxic, and but it's supposed to be that we're supposed to have that kind of outlook on it. But yeah, using it's just I cannot get past the using sex to get what you want. I wish I think it's another missed opportunity is exploring the and I'm sure they've done this in novels and books and things, but the politics of Ferengi commerce would be fascinating. Very, very cutthroat. I'm guessing very, I don't know, just a bunch of used car salesmen trying to put each other over. I think would be fun, but it's a see it for me because the execution and the what they're saying of how just doesn't work for me. To skip it.
Yeah, my standard assumption usually going into these rewatches, we'll see if I still place it here, is that I think Prophet and Lace is Deep Space Nine's worst episode for me. I think it's the one that I put at the bottom of my ranks, at least, like I said, assuming and remembering previous experiences. So I agree with everything you said. I think all of the Ferengi's worst qualities are at their,
on display.
On display and at their most cringe. Yeah, it's just by this point I'm kind of tired of those tropes, and I get, like you said too, that it's designed. I mean, it's intentional and it's designed to put a mirror up to our own worst qualities and to challenge us to reflect on things that we know happen in our society and maybe things that we're even prey to ourselves.
Hey, this is wrong.
Yeah, and I get that. And satire is a key dramatic device in storytelling. But it walks a fine line. Yeah, it's got to be perfectly pitched for it to be accessible and widely effective. And I think Prophet and Lace is an example of a misfire. Rob mentions the 10 Backwards podcast recently did an in defense of Prophet and Lace. Definitely recommend listening. They've had a few positives, but had a tough time. I'm definitely curious to hear that. I will definitely check that out. Sure. I'm eager to hear that. Yeah. How about Chief O'Brien? There's a couple Chief O'Brien episodes up here that I think we should kind of start closing our last gaps here with Honor Among Thieves. That's kind of a film noir-y.
Chester. Yeah, no, it's a see it for me. Again, this is one of those episodes where keep coming back to this, but it's a one-off type of setup, but it pertains and somehow comes back to the war. And some people may get tired of that. I do not. I think it humanizes the Federation underworld a little bit. This guy is not a bad guy. He's not a mustache twirling, conniving bad guy. He's got a wife and kids, but he also does some terrible things. And I love the. I guess my favorite part of it is the dynamic of O'Brien is the family man, and so this guy is the family man too. Yeah. And yeah, that's kind of the tough thing for him to swallow. And he does blow his cover and do all these things to try to save him. But I think this kind of shows the really dark side, which we get a little bit of in Deep Space Nine. But yeah, the bad stuff that you can get into in the underbelly of Federation.
Mm-hmm.
So bad that you can't even get out, and that's really sad. But it's also, I think, interesting to kind of explore. But also the family stuff. I think for me, those two things warrant a see it
Yeah,
tag.
I would say the same. I'm a fan. Rob mentions not having been a huge fan of Honor Among Thieves over the years, but grown to like it more over recent years. It is. I think it's an acquired taste because it is so dark. I think it's interesting. We talked last week about fair trade being like an undervalued piece of Trek, and they're very different episodes for a lot of reasons. But I do think both of them kind of explore that down that road lies ruin aspect of life. You know, making one bad choice, one lie, one wrong turn leads to another wrong turn, and before you know it, you're in a world of you know what and can't get out.
Yeah.
Two very different characters who are living very different lives, getting there very different ways. But I think there are some commonalities with the themes explored in both those episodes. But yeah, I like the guest star, Nick Tate, I think is his name, from Space 1999 and Ultra from the 70s science fiction show.
Does it great.
He's a really good character. Yeah, tragic character. I think I like, in true Deep Space Nine fashion, the complexity of that character, the gray area. You know, he's doing a lot of bad things and not living the most upstanding life, but he's a family guy. He loves his cat. Like he's got qualities that are relatable, and O'Brien connects with him for reasons that are valid. But people compare it to Donnie Brasco in Space. I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but I hear you, Jimmy 77. Let's do Time's Orphan as the other big O'Brien story.
Yeah, I think our good buddy Dom, I have to mention this at the top of the show. That's the only time we see Chester, but we do see Chester in Time's Orphan.
Yes.
Molly asks if he can come with us to the picnic. Man, this one's tough. Because technically, there's not a lot of connection to the war stuff, really. But I'm gonna cheat here a little bit, and it's a see it for me.
Okay.
Because I like the parent stuff in it, and the lengths they would go to. A parent would go for their child.
Sure.
And I also think there's some good Odo stuff. He lets him go. He lets him, and there's some great stuff with. There's a great line of he. It's funny because he says, I think if there was a someone who could get off the station and break a prisoner, it would be you, Chief. And he kind of does that in the early seasons. But no, my the way I rationalize this as I see it is technically this is a Bajoran artifact and history element, because they go to the Bajoran government and ask about this ancient species that was there before, and yeah, I think it's a see it for me, because I could easily just throw it on as a skip it. But I think there's some good stuff with how far a parent would go for a child.
Sure.
It gets a little wishy-washy with the conclusion and how does it all work and things like that. But yeah, I think it's I don't know, a middle of the road episode, but with some interesting backstories with the parent stuff and the Bajoran kind of connection. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a tough time with Time's Orphan. I think you're absolutely right. I think if you're looking at it through the lens of how far a parent would go, and the O'Briens are like, they offer a window into parenthood and an opportunity to tell these kinds of stories in a way that no other Star Trek characters really do. This is a domesticated couple with a family living a traditional, like, recognizable civilian life, sort of in the shadows of Starfleet service, basically. And that opens the door to tell stories like this, and I appreciate that, and I think it's on point for Deep Space Nine to keep that story beat alive, like to have that that kind of like I talked about in seasons previous doing this thing, like when they use Sisko's single parenthood and widow or status as a piece of the story. I like that because it's keeping like the foundational pieces of these characters, you know, relevant and alive and moving forward. And this kind of does that too. But I've never been a huge fan of the kind of mechanics of it. And, on its own, it's not an episode that I'm very eager to go back to. And I think its life in this season 6 of Big War Story, yeah, it feels kind of an out of place. Exactly. I don't know that it's helped by its surroundings. Yeah, so
tough run. We get Prophet and Lace, and then
Time's Orphan stuff.
Yeah.
Let's do Valiant. That's kind of sticking out like a sore thumb. It's something I can't really define to lump in with other things. It's kind of a Jake and Nog story, very heavy. I have mixed feelings on this one myself, but
I do too, and it's a see it for me because of the ending. I think there's some great. Nog has a great line, where he's talking about the captain, and he said, he may have been a good person, may or may not have been a good person, but he was a bad captain. And I think the captaincy, like being a captain, gets explored a lot in Star Trek, and it's really cool to see, especially at the basic level. It's got some Captain Ahab vibes, and where, some of these cadets, they're not officers, they're cadets, are just going after the medal and the glory. And I think that's the problem that I have with Red Squad, is because sometimes it's more about the glory and the honor and what it means to have that pip on your uniform, instead of what I think it should be about. And I think it should be about the best together, working together to solve an issue, which to me is Star Trek. But I have some tough things about this episode, but I'm gonna give it a see it because of the Nog stuff and his realization of, because I think he's always been really focused and wanted to be a captain someday, and wanted to be focused on his career. And I think him learning ins and outs, what to do and what not to do about being a Starfleet officer, that's what I think really holds this episodes afloat. I just, some of the negatives, I just find it hard to believe that the cadets could be out there for that long against the Dominion, who have kicked Starfleet officers' butts, and then somehow this ragtag group of cadets was able to stay out there for 8 months. I think the Nog stuff warrants it. I see it. This is one of those. Yeah,
I totally get where you're coming from. I think Nog is the highlight here. I think he is the most successful aspect of Valiant. I agree with Rob and Adam. Rob says the cadets on the Valiant are incredibly irritating. I think this is a rare instance in this era in Star Trek where they, I think, really misfired on the guest cast. I'm not a fan of most, if not all, of those performances. Real quick, Adam, I think, put probably the nail on the head with they just exude trust fund baby energy to me. Which is like, exactly.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. And you'd think that the cadets would be more straight-laced and very idealistic towards the Federation, because they're right in duty and what it means to, and they're right because they're right in it. They're still in that. So it just, I don't know, doesn't feel. Yeah. It does, because like it's it.
Yeah, I think they're a little too, to use maybe American TV parlance, like they're too CW-y, a portrayal of like teenagers. Like they're not realistic to me. I just find them to be. I get it, they're elite, they're Red Squad, all that stuff, but I just find them to be pretty cringy. But I think because of the exploration of the war storyline, I think it does move Nog's character forward. I love what you said, that last line he has, that that he may have been a good person or
good,
a good leader,
whatever.
But he was not a good leader. He wasn't a good captain.
No.
And that's an important distinction and an important thing for Nog to, I think, realize in his journey as a cadet himself and an ensign at this point, young Starfleet officer. So I have mixed feelings on that one. I know it's kind of a divisive episode. At least that's what I've kind of gathered through the Twitter sphere.
Yeah.
But good showcase for Aaron Eisenberg as Nog, at least. Let's do the Reckoning. That's kind of the episode of the season to kind of focus on Bajoran history and culture and Sisko's role as emissary and Kai Wynn, all that good stuff's really on display here. What do you think of that?
It's a see it.
It's a see it. Okay.
I think I don't know. I can't. The memory escapes me. But is this the first time we see a Paw Wraith or the term Paw Wraith?
I think so.
No, it's
maybe.
Or is it? No, it's. What's the one with the chief's wife?
Oh yeah, the assignment. Yep, you're right.
Okay,
that's where they're introduced. Yep.
But yeah, this is kind of really diving deep into the Bajoran kind of backstory and the fight between the Paw Wraiths a little bit. They're kind of introducing that a little bit, and further on in this season, it gets a little bit more amplified. But yeah, I think this is at least for me, I think a time where Sisko tips the scale, like he's trying to balance this Starfleet officer emissary type of role. He tips the scale more towards the emissary, and really puts his faith in the prophets. And I think it used to be he would put his faith in the ability of a Starfleet officer as just a human being, as a member of the Federation. But now it's like he's slowly tipping the scale towards really, really believing in his role and in the prophets. So that to me warrants to see it. He's definitely of Bajoran now. He's willing to literally sacrifice everything. Sacrifice the thing that probably is the most important to him. It's Jake, and
right.
Yeah, it doesn't put the Kai in a good light
No.
at all. But yeah, that's see it for me.
Yeah, I like the Reckoning. I think it's an interesting one. I think it's kind of key in that Bajoran story that really plays out over the course of the show with exploring their faith and how it affects Sisko and his role. There's that like sub thread of episodes that you can kind of like chart together and have like a 12-episode marathon of just those stories. This is a critical component of that. I think it uses the Kai well, puts her in, like you said, some really challenging positions and forces some tough decisions on her part. I like the Sisko having to stand between, his son and probably his, I don't know if his closest friend, but like, his second in command, his number one is, Kira. Have kind of face off and put Sisko in that uncomfortable position. Good dramatic stuff, I think, happening in that.
Yeah. Well, at Trek After Dark, Caleb kind of brought up how he was kind of unsure about the Bajoran faith and stuff, and at the end of the day, he said that he was enjoying it a little bit more this time around, and so am I. To be honest, it's just interesting because it's such a rich part of that kind of the Bajoran culture and things. So it's kind of it's interesting to fascinate, or it's interesting and fascinating to kind of explore that that kind of faith and their beliefs. So yeah, good stuff.
Agreed. An episode I'm really curious to hear what you thought of, because I find it to be really underrated and under-discussed, is The Sound of Her Voice, as like a really standalone, traditional kind of Star Trek episode, mined in the middle of this season-long arc of war and stuff. What do you think of The Sound of Her Voice?
I think this should have been the finale, if I'm being completely honest.
Wow.
This is a very, very underrated episode. I had remembered nothing about it, but it should be talked about as like top 10
Holy crap!
in this season.
In the season,
Sorry,
okay.
in the season. Yeah, because it's really fascinating in the stuff that is explored. It's a very simple rescue setup, but I think my favorite part about it is there's been so much has happened and so much is still going on. It's nice to be able to take a breath and just have these characters just talk.
Mhm.
And it's such a simple. It's just a really just. Sometimes it's a tracking shot. Sometimes it's just lock the camera down and sit in a bed and talk to this captain who's in a bad spot. Yeah, it's the ending is tough, but it's also it's there's some great moments at the end. I really like the toast between those two characters that they give Bashir and O'Brien.
Yeah.
And it plays on that everybody has issues and that they should work through some things and they should talk about those things, especially in right now in this time.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
I think it ages like fine wine. I think even in now too with I think there's truth in having lived it myself and experienced this. There's something
isolation.
Yes, there's isolation and the way that affects a person and makes you want to maybe reach out and connect. But I think there's some truth to. There's like a comfort level sometimes in opening up to somebody who is new or is like not in your immediate circle. Like, I think and I think the rise of the internet and social media and people meeting people like you and I met and like some of the people in the chat and I've met, like, you get to meet people who are far away and that you wouldn't ordinarily know. And sometimes it's honestly easier to like connect with a person like that and be open and honest and talk about deep personal things with people who there's a distance. Like I think there's truth in that, and I think a lot of people can relate to developing those kinds of relationships.
And I think it does a good job of a lot of the, maybe not O'Brien so much, but a lot of the characters are like caught off guard a little bit. Like, wow, I'm not used to be able to be so open and so real.
Yep.
Which is very relatable.
Very.
You hit the nail on the head for sure.
Yep.
So see it for me. Yeah, big time see it.
And I think the end of that episode really telegraphs and foreshadows things that are coming in the finale. Tears of the Prophets, there's a line, isn't it, O'Brien, that says eventually there's going to be somebody missing from our circle or something like that.
And they cut to, oh my gosh. It was really quick. I was like, I wasn't sure if that was intentional.
I think it probably
or not, but man, and then they cut to her. It's just like, what? Jeez, interesting choice, but
yeah. What do you think of the finale? Tears of the Prophets. I know you just watched it this morning before we did this, so it's fresh.
Yes, I did. I got a little bit behind. I was midweek. I was right on schedule, but as the weekend, as it does, kind of jumbled things up. So I did watch it just very recently. I'm very raw. I do, like I said, when I watched Waltz, I knew what was coming, and I tried to put my feelings aside to watch it. This positives here. I like the exploration and the just what it does for the Cisco character, and that I remember I talked about the balance here. He tipped the scale back towards Starfleet officer, and I think the Federation, as much I hate to disagree with what the Federation does, but I think they got a little bit too greedy and a little bit too desperate at times, when I think they should have been a little bit more level-headed and even keeled. They kind of fell into that trap a little bit, but yeah, I like that it's there are consequences to the war, and to sometimes the Hail Mary is not the play. There will be consequences, and you will get sacked for a very deep loss. And at the end of the day, it was a very tough loss. Like I said, I wish the sound of her voice was the finale because I think there was some good stuff in that. Very great ending, being about together and things like that, and struggles of war. But we got this, and yeah. Let's dive into the elephant in the room. And we've talked about this before. I think we did a whole show about it. But Death and Trek, I don't have a problem with. I think the Starfleet officers know. I know it's a kind of a stigma in today's culture about red shirts and stuff. But these Starfleet officers know that behind any turn, it could just flip in a matter of seconds. That they could lose their life, and I mean this is a dangerous job at the end of the day. And I think. Yeah, on a big space station like that, you can get comfortable. So I do not have a problem with Death and Trek. I think the tough time that I have with is the foreshadowing, is the goodbyes, and I think the issue I have is that it's not done well. It doesn't feel warranted. I think that character deserves something better than that. Doing something else, different direction. I don't have a problem with Death. I think it's an interesting. We talked about this as well as the fascination with the symbiont and things like that. They explore death in hosts and different hosts in the show and even in Discovery, and they do a great job, and it's fine. I just think that character it doesn't feel true to the character. What are your thoughts?
I think I've always kind of struggled with a little bit the way it happens, the sort of chance meeting
that she's in there.
That she's in there when Dukat pops in. Like, to me, that's a little silly and a little easy. I think there were ways to give her a send off that might have been more. But then on the other hand, like I actually like the way that they. I was gonna say like the way that they killed Tasha in Skin of Evil, that on an away mission, kind of out of nowhere. But that's different. Like they're on an away mission. She's a security chief. She's, aggressive. And
again, that's
killed.
Away missions are dangerous.
Right. Yeah. This is, you're at a shrine, praying, and Phantom Dukat shows up out of nowhere and zaps you. Like that is a little over. I think that's unfortunate, and I think there were ways to do it that would have given her a more fitting send off. I do think just because of the nature of how good the cast is and how well played the feeling of family is by this point in the show, the reaction to it happening through the eyes of Michael Dorn as Worf and Avery Brooks as Sisko, like those actors
that was good.
Like in that last scene with Dax and Worf is great, and Worf given the death howl is really good stuff. I mean, I think it's in keeping with everything you would know going in.
Early Klingon stuff.
Yeah. That's like going all the way back to Heart of Glory and stay true to those traditions, and that's great. And I like a lot of the other stuff in this episode. I like the exploration of Worf and Dax trying, to get pregnant, as like, and dealing with the cross species challenges of getting married and dealing with those things. Like that's tough and different, and we see a lot of that in Star Trek. You hear a lot about this species and that species getting together, and this, I like that they're dealing with the realities of those challenges. And
I wish they had started earlier on that kind of train
and played that out longer.
And it's to me, I do like the idea of that, but it just feels too just shoehorned in there to make you feel a little bit more sad because I don't know. I'm trying to be as positive as possible because I think there are some really great stuff in this, and unfortunately, it does have to be a see it because it's such a pivotal mark in the whole story arc. But I think this big of a mistake and misstep just overshadows the episode, and I think that happens with the ending of a lot of shows and other shows that we will not get into now because we always get into that. But that's I think I think you're right. I think there's some really strong stuff in this, but I think it's overshadowed with this too big of a misstep of such a beloved character, because at the end of the day, like, maybe they thought that she was more of a background character, but I just think that at this point they've done so much with the whole cast that I don't think, because it's easier, it's a true ensemble. It's easier to put TOS in a kind of a trifecta type of box instead of Deep Space Nine. I think Deep Space Nine has more of a true ensemble. Yeah, there's some background characters, but it gets blurred. It gets blurred because they've just used the cast so well.
Yeah.
And when you take a pillar out of that, there's going to be some fallout. And
well, one of the things I'm most interested in as we get into season 7 for you and for me, and I'm curious to hear. One of the things I'm most curious to hear you respond to and think about and hear what you think is the use of Ezra, like what's coming with the Dax stuff. Like, that's another, I don't want to call it divisive, but it's a you could go either way on how that's done and what opportunities that brings forward for the ensemble of characters. And I'm just eager to hear. It's going to be an interesting conversation piece, I think, moving forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, as Jimmy77 said, kind of saving best for last. These are 2 episodes that we discussed, I think, not in depth, but heavily in the Trek, the rewatch recaps over the last few weeks when we would hit these. I think what we're looking at left here are probably, if we took a widespread poll of fans on Deep Space Nine, what episodes are your favorite of all time? I think these are 2 that would get really, really high up on that list, maybe even 1 and 2, like on consensus average. We got In the Pale Moonlight and Far Beyond the Stars. I'm going to go ahead and assume that they're both C-its, imagining that that would be difficult to go a different way on those designations. But is there anything you want to say that you haven't said already in previous episodes? Yeah, obviously, I think you and I both think they're both classics and very different episodes, very different kinds of Star Trek stories. But either way, just
Far Beyond the Stars is such an anomaly.
Yeah.
But it's so good. I can't say more than I have already said or what other people said. So I will just say that it's just an anomaly, and there are some anomalies in this season that are definitely misfires. But this is just so, again, I mean, technically it's not really time travel. I don't know what it is, but it's so good. It's such a big sci-fi concept, but it's also got typical Star Trek kind of campiness on the nose type of things. But it's so good, I think, in this season. But I guess I'll talk more about In the Pale Moonlight because we talked about fair trade, and yeah, it's kind of similar in that these lies and these ideals of a good idea just is a very slippery slope. And yeah, it puts our character, our kind of main guy, in a position to do some just not Federation type stuff. I know I've seen some people say that it's very, very dark, and they don't know if the Cisco character would do that. Well, it got signed off by Starfleet and the Federation, so it's not all. But I guess at the end of the day, it's exploring what happens to the best of us in war. So
desperation. Points in.
Yeah. When you're backed up against a corner, yeah, sometimes that's when you're the most dangerous and the most desperate. And yeah, it's great at production. I mean, I feel like they saved some money. This was a very simple setup, bottle-esque show, which is cool to see because it's one of the best of the season, probably the best of the season, maybe between that and Far Beyond. But yeah, it's the Cisco, his he rationalizing it through his log, I think is a cool exploration. I think I love to see this really big, because we get a little bit of a taste of it here and there with their logs and stuff, but I think this is why we have logs, for him to be able to talk and work these things out. That's cool to see. That's that's kind of an outlet you need to have. I think it's like a confessional. But I love to break the fourth wall. I love that. But his I think his line at the end just kind of sticks out about he can live with that.
Yeah.
And then he deletes it. It's just like, oh my gosh, that.
It's great. Yeah, I mean, I think
so good, so freaking good.
I think they're both classics. They're both very different. Like I said, In the Pale Moonlight's so baked into the mythology of the show with the war and putting the characters putting Cisco in a position that can only be explored at that point in the show at that time. Like, it's very specifically, latter half of season 6, war's not going well. Like, it needs a lot of continuity to get there. Far Beyond the Stars, I think they could tell that story at kind of any point in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
But it's so specifically Deep Space Nine and so specifically Star Trek to explore, the Star Trek's kind of place in science fiction and what it does. It's so meta. And yeah, they're my 2 favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine as a whole. I think I would have them at 1 and 2, and they're both in this season. So I don't know that I'm going to ask you to choose between the 2. If you want to choose between the 2, I'm happy to hear it. But I do have a question that
I would say In the Pale Moonlight.
Okay.
Right now.
Right now. Yeah. Okay. I think me too.
Probably my favorite season.
By nose.
But yeah, just overall, kind of just thoughts on the season. Yeah, there are some three skip-its here, but I think this is the season. While it has some greats, it's not as strong as maybe 4 or 5. If I'm being honest again, but that's not to knock this season at all. I think there's some really good stuff in it. Really good stuff in it. Because when you start a rewatch, it always just brings your thoughts on your overall thoughts on the show, and I always hear people cite how dark Deep Space Nine gets. I think as the show goes on, the darker it gets. There are some really, really dark moments for our characters in this season, and I know there's some to come, and there's already been some, but I think in the middle of it, it goes to some dark places. I think that's one thing that I wanted to get here, especially coming off of In the Pale Moonlight and the Prophets I just watched this morning. Just goes to some really dark places that I think in Star Trek we haven't gone, and it's so cool to see because it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and we've talked about this before, but in life there's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Right.
So
I think the thing that keeps it... Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm done.
No, I think the thing that keeps it Star Trek at its core is that the characters struggle with it. I think Cisco having to do that confessional, in fact, they didn't just do it and move on. Like, he's struggling with it. He knows the gray area he's walking into and the moral ambiguity of the whole situation. Like, he's aware of it. He's reckoning with it. He's dealing with it. He's it's a challenge for him. And I think the other thing that binds this season, I think you said it really well with like the end of The Sound of Her Voice, is the through all this misery and the challenges of the war and the ups and downs, that end scene in The Sound of Her Voice where these people are together and they're working through it as a unit and leaning into each other. Yeah, that is Star Trek at the end of the day for me. I think that's one of the core principles. That roots it in that foundation, and that's ever present, even in the darkest of times, in this season.
Yeah, because it's you really get a sense of family here because when the going gets tough, you come together with your family,
Right.
and I think they do that here with their work family and the people they serve with.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, like Cisco goes back, he goes back to his family.
Yep.
He goes back. So.
And what does he do differently in Tears of the Prophets at the end compared to what he did at the end of Call to Arms? Do you remember? He makes a different choice about what he leaves behind.
Takes the baseball.
Yeah. Yep. Which is a really neat. I think
that's a really deep cut.
It is.
To the previous season, and I think that's cool because it scares the rest of the crew.
Yep.
It scares Kira.
She knows what it means.
Yeah, I think, but it's also that old adage that the night is darkest before the dawn.
Correct.
And so I think this is playing into, this is going to get as tough as it ever is in the whole show.
Right.
And so.
Yeah, well, my question was, and you kind of answered it, there were some people discussing Season 6 on Twitter, and the question of the sort of day for a little bit there was, is it the best season in all of Star Trek? Some people would cite it as their favorite, and I don't think I would. I kind of agree with you. I totally get, I think there's truth in the thematic consistency in this season. I think when you look at the story that it tells and the themes that it explores, there is the continuity and a togetherness that is there in Season 6, and it is firing on all cylinders on that front. But when I think of Season 6, I kind of have two halves of my brain. I think of that first 6 episodes that are really humming and firing on all cylinders. They're killing it early on and really setting up what they're going to do. And not only setting up Season 6, but really teeing up the way this show is going to push to the end. That's all really successful. But I do think even some of the episodes you gave see-its to, for good reason, and because we are in such important times where some of these things are playing into bigger themes and building on the premise of the show. To me, when I look at that back half of Valiant, Prophet and Lace times Orphan, I can't help but feel like the season kind of runs out of gas a little bit. I think even the sound of her voice is I love that episode, and it's grown on me a lot over the years. But it definitely, and even the Reckoning, like it doesn't end on like a, man, we are hammering home A's after, and like there are other seasons in Trek, even in like Enterprise, I think at the end of season 3, I think that ends better than season 6 of DS9 does for me in my own personal book. So it's a strong season, and there's great episodes and a great thematic exploration of war and the cost of all those things. But I don't know that I would put it as high as other people do.
I would have to agree with you. I think consistency is greatness. So, while like some of these episodes are probably cited as Deep Space Nine's best episode, there's some other stuff that it's like the complete, not even 180, it's a complete 360 of just not good stuff. And so I think, and I'm not trying to knock season 6 at all. It's a fantastic season. It's definitely a strong season, don't get me wrong.
And groundbreaking for Star Trek because of the serialization.
Yes, very much so. But there's some other seasons that I might put ahead of it.
Agreed. Rob's taken off. Feel better, Rob. I hope you keep battling and things keep going in a good direction. Yep. Take care. Hope to see you soon.
Hope as well.
Yeah.
Good health. Positive vibes.
Absolutely. I want to thank everybody for sticking with us. This is longer than usual for us. We're almost at an hour and 45 minutes here. But
wrap this up.
Bound to happen. I think these episodes are so rich, and you could really dive in deeper with all of them. So many of them, and it's really been a fun time talking about season 6 of Deep Space Nine. Makes me excited to get into it. I'm just starting my journey into the season, like I said at the beginning. Any final thoughts before we?
I think it'd be a good time to say what's coming next week, because I think it's a good
natural next step.
Segue of what we talked about. We're doing another character spotlight real quick. I know it's been long, but character spotlight on Jadzia Dax, which I think is perfect timing to kind of talk about the culmination of that character, and hopefully I'll have some episodes under my belt of kind of what's to come with that character as well, because the character's changed. It's also the same kind of.
Yeah.
So it should be fun.
Absolutely, I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be if we're ever going to do a look at Jadzia, it should be at the end of one of our rewatches of season 6 at least. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be fun to talk about more Deep Space Nine, more Dax, and we'll do that next week.
Shout out. Yep. Shout out to the chat for sticking around. You guys make the show. You guys are awesome. Thank you guys.
Yeah, we had a really good showing in the chat. Some of our old favorites, Cyber Honey and Jimmy77, who are here all the time, week in, week out. Rob hops in very often. Always good to see you. Adam, good to see you again. It was really helpful to have you guys there and keep the fire burning.
Mm.
All right, I think that'll do it. Thanks, everybody. Take care. See you next week. And
yep.
Live long
Thanks,
and prosper.
everyone.